everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about Passbolt, which is an open source password manager that you can get started with completely for free. In this video I'm going to show you everything you need to know to get started with Passbolt, whether you're deploying it to a cloud provider like AWS or DigitalOcean, or if you're trying to host it on your own Homelab using Docker and Docker Compose. I'm also going to show you a method of how you can access your Passbolt server hosted on your Homelab without any port forwarding. We're going to do this with a feature of Cloudflare, which is zero trust access, and it's completely free to use as well. Now, full disclosure, Passbolt did pay for a sponsored video, and this is the video. I do use Passbolt as my own personal password manager. I've been using it for about a month now, and I really do enjoy their product. I originally came from using just a KeePass database where I hosted it locally and I had a version out on Google Drive, but I needed a more robust solution, one that comes with Chrome extensions and apps, so I have access to my password everywhere. And Passbolt has been a really good middle ground where you have all the enterprise features that you would expect from an online password manager, yet you can actually host your passwords yourself, so you're not as exposed to the privacy concerns and data breach concerns that you would with a completely online solution. And as we've seen in the news, that can be a real concern nowadays. Anyways, let's jump into the video and get our Passbolt server set up. Alright, so we are on the Passbolt website here, and you can see we're presented with two options for how we can get started. We can either do an on-premise installation, or we can sign up for Passbolt's cloud sign up. I'm going to go ahead and hit on-premise installation because this is the free option. This is the option you want to do if you want to host your own Passbolt server in your lab or in a cloud environment like AWS or DigitalOcean. So I'll just go to free download, and you can see it gives you quite a few different options here. Personally, I host Passbolt on a Docker container in my home lab, and if you're interested in that setup, skip ahead to the next chapter and I'll show you how to do it with Docker. But if you're looking to get it set up on AWS or DigitalOcean, stick around and watch this portion of the video. So the setup with AWS and DigitalOcean are very similar. I'm going to go with DigitalOcean here, and I'm just going to go to deploy to DigitalOcean. And then a new page should pop up, and then I'll just go create Passbolt using a droplet. And this is going to go ahead and start provisioning your Passbolt server after you choose a couple different options here. So San Francisco looks good to me. And you'll want to change the instance type that you're using. $56 per month is quite a bit, so I'll just go with the cheapest option for $7 a month here. And then I'll make sure I have my SSH keys enabled. And that's it. Go ahead and hit create droplet, and now our Passbolt server is being provisioned. This part of the process takes a few minutes, so just go ahead, grab a drink, and you should be ready to go in a few minutes. Alright, awesome. My Passbolt server is up and running. I'm just going to copy the outside IP address here and bring it up in a new window, and you can see Passbolt is ready to go. Now, before you go ahead and hit get started, you'll probably want to set up some certificates, and Passbolt makes it possible to get certificates using Let's Encrypt. So in order for Let's Encrypt to work, it needs to do what's called a DNS challenge. So we'll need to set up a DNS name pointing to our DigitalOcean server here. So I'm using Cloudflare. Whatever you're using as your DNS provider, you'll just have to use that. But I'm just going to add a record, and then I'm just going to put in the IP address of my Passbolt server, and I'm going to call it Passbolt 1, as I already have a Passbolt server hosted on my home lab, and I don't want the two to interfere. So Passbolt 1 is the one that I'm going to be using for my Passbolt server. In the Passbolt documentation, it says you just need to modify this nginx Passbolt configuration file and then run reconfigure, and it'll take you through the couple different prompts. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go into the console of my Passbolt server. So I will go into DigitalOcean, hit console, and this should bring me up shell interface. And once you're in, it does give you some instructions, it looks like, but we have the documentation here. So I'm just gonna VI and see if this pastes in. And then it looks like it's this line down here. And I'm going to modify this with my domain name. So I'm going to call it Passbolt 1 since I already have a Passbolt server on my Homelab using that name. So I'll just go Passbolt 1 and I'll go devopsbrad.com and then write that out. I then need to run the deep package configuration, so I will paste that in. And for these options, you're going to want to hit no for creating a local MySQL database. And then you're going to want to hit yes to configure the Nginx server. And then here it's asking us if we want to use Let's Encrypt to get SSL certificates. So let's go ahead and hit auto in order to use Let's Encrypt. And then here it's asking us to put in our domain name again. So I'll go passbolt1.devopsbrad.com. And then we'll want to put in a valid email address. And then you can see that Let's Encrypt is doing the DNS challenge, and as long as you have those DNS records set up correctly, it should go ahead and pass. And now it looks like it did. So now we can access our Passbolt server over TLS using our domain name that we set. So let's go ahead and try that. And there we are. We can now get started with configuring Passbolt. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Get Started. And we're in. I'm not sure why I'm still getting this error message. It's probably something that the Passbolt team may have to fix. But let's go ahead and start configuration. We know that we're using HTTPS here. So it wants us to configure a database. We're just doing a single instance deploy. The MySQL database is on that same droplet, so we can just keep the default parameters here. Now it wants us to create a key for our server. I'm just going to call mine DevOps Passbolt, and then we'll want to give it a valid email address. And just hit next. Alright, so this may have been why we were getting the warning before. I'm going to go ahead and hit force SSL and then hit next. Alright, so now we have email configuration, and you're going to want to make sure you fill this out. Passbolt sends confirmation emails and everything like that. Probably the easiest way for you guys to do it is just to use Gmail's SMTP. You can create an application key and use that for this. And you should also send a test email just to make sure that it's working before you finish your configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my details here. Alright, so let's send a test email. And it looks like the test email has been sent successfully, so we're good to move on to the next step. And now we're going to want to create our admin user. So let's go ahead and do that. And now the installation is taking place. We'll just let this go and then we'll hop into the admin console. Alright, so that happened almost instantly. Let's go ahead and generate a password. So let me put in a super secure password here. And now Passbolt is asking to save a recovery key. And this is a very important concept with Passbolt. You need this recovery key to get into Passbolt and set it up on new devices. You use the combination of a recovery key and a passphrase to get access to your passwords. And if you lose access to this recovery key, you will lose access to your passwords. So you'll want to keep this file safe. So I'll go ahead and save that and hit next. And now it's asking me to set a color and a token. And this is just for anti-phishing attacks. If you just randomize this into one that makes sense for you, this is going to be presented to you when you log in. And if this token ever changes, then you know that someone's trying to run a phishing attack on you. So this is a pretty common thing that secure applications use. So I'm happy with this one. I'll hit next. So now we are in Passbolt and we are ready to use it. And the first thing you always want to do when you get one of these new applications is go to your profile, go to theme, and then make sure that you choose a dark theme, and it just makes everything look so much better. So I'm going to get into all the different features of Passbolt as well as the CLI, but I want to show you guys how I have this set up on my lab. So I'm going to skip to that. If you're not interested in that and you just want to see the features of Passbolt, skip ahead to the next chapter. Alright, so for those of you interested in the Docker method and hosting this on your home lab, Passbolt gives you access to Docker and a Docker Compose file that you can use, but I actually have my own version of it that I'm going to make available in the description below, but it has the added benefit of using Cloudflare tunnels, which is going to give you external access to your Passbolt server. So let's go through my Docker Compose file, and you can see it's comprised of 3 different services. So there's the database service, there's the Passbolt service, and then there's this additional service that I've added, which is the Cloudflare tunnel. So the settings for the DB and the Passbolt service are pretty much the same as the official one that Passbolt gives you. I've just added some additional parameters here for setting your email settings and made this accessible using a .m file. So all you have to do is change the settings in that .m file. And then if you want to use Cloudflare tunnels, you can keep this service enabled, but if you don't, you can just comment this out. Now, if you want to use Cloudflare tunnels, they're very simple to use and they're free to use if you have a Cloudflare account. All you're going to need is a Cloudflare account and a domain name. Now, setting up the Cloudflare tunnel is relatively simple. I'm going to add instructions in the README, but I'll just give a general overview of what it looks like on my system. So I have a tunnel here. It's under Cloudflare Zero Trust Access Tunnels, and mine is down right now. I've taken down my Passbolt server, but as soon as I do Docker Compose up, this tunnel's going to come up. And basically, all you had to do is hit Create Tunnel and change a few settings. Basically, I've pointed it to my domain name, passbolt.devopsbrad.com, and for the configuration, I've set it to the service Passbolt, as this is the host name of my Docker container. I've also added application protection on this tunnel, so not everyone will be able to access it. I've set the settings so only I have access to it when I'm on my home networks, and if I'm out and about on my phone somewhere, it's going to send me an email challenge before I can actually get access to it. So if you're setting up Cloudflare tunnels, I highly recommend this. It's just another added layer of security that you should have for your external URLs. So if you have any questions about that, leave the questions in the comments below and I'll try to help you out. But let's go ahead and bring up our Passbolt server. Alright, so I have my Docker Compose file here and I filled out my .m file. So I'm just going to do a Docker Compose up. And this is going to bring up all the services in my application. It'll take about a minute here. Let's check back in once this is done provisioning. Alright, so my Cloudflare tunnel is up, so I should be able to hit it. So I'll just go ahead and put that in here. And now I'm getting an email challenge, and this is what I wanted to show you guys. This is how I have application layer protection on top of my URL. So I'm going to get my code sent to me. Alright, I got the code. Let's sign in. Alright, so now Cloudflare has let us in, but if you try to actually enter in your email address here, it's going to let you know that you need to be invited. So you actually have to do a docker exec command to send a command to the Passbolt container and set up your first user. So in the Passbolt documentation, if you just go to next steps, it tells you how to do that. And yes, it's this one here. So just copy this and fill in your details. I'm going to do that now. Alright, I'm going to paste in the command here with my details. And our user is saved, so I'm going to go ahead and try to log in now. And I should be able to follow this link here. And now it's asking me to set my password. So I'm just going to do that and save that local key. Make sure you don't lose it, like I said earlier. Hit next, and now I am back into the Passbolt administrative console. Alright, so we're sitting on a new Passbolt installation here. All I've done is change the theme to dark mode. I'm going to go ahead and upload a profile image here and just make it look a little bit better. Alright, a profile image of myself, and let me take everyone through what I like to customize in my Passbolt. So I go under administration, and the first thing I like to do is set up multi-factor authentication. This is your password manager. You want to make sure it's safe, and you don't want to just use your passphrase and your key. You want to include something like a one-time password or a YubiKey. So for like a one-time password, you can use like a Google Authenticator app. And then for a YubiKey, it's just like a little key that you put into your computer and then you press the button whenever you want to retrieve it. If you're using it with your phone, you just press it against your phone like this and it authenticates you like that. So I usually like to enable both of them. It requires a little bit of setup, so I'll just skip that here. It's pretty obvious how to do it. Now, the other section I like to go to is email notifications, and I would customize this based on your needs. Otherwise, you're going to get lots of emails, especially when you're putting in a bunch of new passwords. But by default, these are pretty good. And then we have the email server. And if you're ever having issues with Passbolt sending emails, this is where I would go to help troubleshoot. So by default, you can't click either of these buttons, but I've noticed if I just modify one of these fields, it becomes available to you. And then you can go send test email, and then send a test email, and then that's just a way to verify that your email is working. So if you're having issues with your email, go ahead and come to this section and then just modify the settings until you get it working. Now let's go in and actually start using Passbolt to manage our passwords. That's why we're all here, right? So let's just go to passwords, and under there you can go create, or you can upload all your passwords using a CSV or a key database file. So if you're migrating from another password manager, you should be able to get them in either of these formats. I came from a KeyPass database, so I imported mine from a KDBX file, but CSV works as well. So if you want to import all your passwords, that's how you do it. This is just a test instance, so I'm not going to do it here. I'm just going to go ahead and create a password and show you how Passbolt actually works for authenticating with applications. So let's go ahead and add my Spotify details. Okay, I have my Spotify details, and it wants my passphrase when I'm adding this. So I'll just say until I log out. My password is created, so now let's actually go to Spotify. And when you go to log in, as long as you have the Passbolt extension enabled on your browser or your smartphone, then it should just fill out the details for you. So you can see that it automatically determined to use my Spotify credentials. Just hit login. And that's how easy it is to log in using a password manager. In the past, I was just using KeyPass to do this. Using something like Passbolt is a lot more convenient, and I still have the benefit of hosting my own passwords. Now, another feature I want to show you guys that I have been using with Passbolt is the CLI access. And the reason you may want to use the CLI access is maybe you have some sort of automation or pipeline that needs to create secrets or cycle secrets or pull down secrets. You can use the Passbolt CLI to do that. So to do that, just head on over to the Passbolt GitHub repository and just scroll down until you get to the Go Passbolt CLI. And when you're in here, do me a favor and the Passbolt team a favor and just give it a star if you want to support the Passbolt project. Now, if you want to get the CLI installed, there's installation instructions on how to do it here. The recommended method is to install via your distribution package manager. And the reason why it's preferred is it gives you tab completion, and it also changes the binary name from Go Passbolt CLI to just Passbolt. For me, I find installing things using Go is a lot easier, so I just installed it this way. I don't really need the tab completion, and then I just set an alias. And down here we have how you configure the Passbolt CLI to get access to your server. So basically all you have to do is point it to your Passbolt URL, provide your password, as well as your key file, and that's the key file that you generated when you first generated your account. So I'm going to go ahead and run the commands here. So I just created a simple directory for it, and the only thing I have in here is my Passbolt recovery kit file. I'm going to go ahead and run the command to configure Passbolt. Now that I've configured access with the Passbolt CLI, let's go ahead and try to list some resources. So let's go Passbolt list resource. And if we scroll over here, we can see that it has our Spotify credentials. Now, if we wanted to create a new password, we would just go Passbolt, create, and then I'm just going to paste in the rest of the command here. So we just say Passbolt create resource, we give the resource a name, and then we set a password. I just have the password strong password here. Now, if we go ahead and list again, and we can see that the resource is now there. Now, if we wanted to extract the password from this resource, we would just use the Passbolt get command. So if I use Passbolt get resource and then specify an ID, all I have to do is put in the ID, and I will be able to get my password. Now, this password is just for my user, but I could share this password with other users if there were other users in my Passbolt system. So this is one of the benefits of Passbolt. I won't go through creating teams because it's pretty intuitive, but basically you can create new users in Passbolt, you can create groups, and then you can give permissions to passwords based on the groups. Now, that's all I wanted to show about the self-hosted version of Passbolt, but for those of you that are interested in having a managed version of Passbolt, they do offer it on their website, but they do charge for it. So you can get a free 14-day trial if you just head on over to their website. And if you click through it, they'll provision everything for you and get everything set up so you're good to go. So if you want to just try out Passbolt, that might be the easiest way for you to get exposure to it. And if you want to continue using it after 14 days, there will be a charge. I do have a code in the description below that'll give you 20% off after the 14 days. So one last thing that I want to bring up before we close out this video is the Pro version of Passbolt does have support for SSO. With version 3.9, it looks like they have full support for Azure SSO, but I'm sure that they're going to be adding more providers in the future. Just have a look at their roadmap to see if your provider is on there. So that's all I have for this video. I hope it helped you set up your Passbolt server, and if you have any questions, just leave them down in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.